Being alone for the weekend had sounded like a dream come true. My parents were out of town, giving me free reign of the house. I had planned to binge-watch horror movies, order pizza, and play video games late into the night. It was supposed to be perfect. But as night fell on that second evening, a sense of unease settled over me that I couldn't shake. I fell asleep on the couch with the TV still on, the sound of the late-night news becoming a background hum. Sometime in the early hours, I woke up suddenly. The TV had gone to static, casting an eerie blue light across the living room. It took me a moment to realize what had woken me. A noise, soft but unmistakable, from somewhere in the house. I sat up, heart pounding, straining to listen. There it was again, a faint shuffling, like footsteps on the hardwood floor. I grabbed my phone, checking the time. It was just past 3 a.m. I told myself it was nothing, just the house settling. But the sound came again, louder this time, closer. Every instinct told me to stay put, but curiosity got the better of me. I stood up, the floor creaking under my weight, and crept towards the hallway. The house was pitch dark, the only light coming from the flickering TV. My footsteps were slow and measured, each one making my pulse race faster. I reached the end of the hallway and peered into the kitchen. Everything seemed normal, but then I noticed the back door was slightly ajar. My parents always locked it before going to bed. I swallowed hard, fear clawing at my insides. Suddenly, I heard another sound, this time directly behind me. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. There, standing in the living room, was a tall figure. He was impossibly tall, with pale skin that almost seemed to glow in the darkness. His eyes were black voids, and his lips curled into a sinister smile. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. He said nothing, just stood there, watching me. I took a step back, my mind racing. I needed to get out, to call the police, but I was frozen in place, trapped by his gaze. Without warning, he took a step towards me, his movements slow and deliberate. Panic surged through me, breaking the spell. I turned and bolted for the front door, but as I reached it, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, pulling me back. "No!" I screamed, struggling against his grip. His strength was inhuman, his fingers digging into my skin like iron claws. He dragged me back into the living room, throwing me to the floor. I scrambled to my feet, backing away from him. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling. He tilted his head, his smile widening. "I want you to listen," he said, his voice a low, menacing whisper. "Listen to what?" I stammered, my eyes darting around the room for anything I could use as a weapon. "To the silence," he replied, stepping closer. "To the darkness." I glanced at my phone, lying on the coffee table just out of reach. If I could just get to it, call for help. As if reading my thoughts, he lunged at me, knocking the phone to the floor and crushing it under his foot. The screen shattered, the tiny fragments reflecting the flickering TV light. "There's no one to help you," he said, his voice now a growl. "No one to hear you." Desperation clawed at me. I grabbed a nearby lamp and swung it at him, but he caught it effortlessly, the glass shattering in his hand. He laughed, a deep, chilling sound that echoed through the house. I ran for the stairs, taking them two at a time, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear him following, his footsteps slow and deliberate, as if he knew there was no rush. I reached my bedroom, slamming the door shut and locking it. My hands shook as I barricaded it with my dresser, the sound of wood scraping against wood the only comfort I had. The door rattled, the handle turning. "You can't hide from me," he called, his voice muffled but clear. I backed away, looking for anything to defend myself. My eyes landed on the baseball bat I kept in the corner, a relic from my high school days. I grabbed it, gripping it tightly, my knuckles white. The door splintered, the lock giving way. He pushed through the barricade with ease, his eyes locking onto mine. "Ready to listen now?" he asked, stepping into the room. I swung the bat with all my strength, but he caught it mid-swing, ripping it from my hands. He tossed it aside, his smile never faltering. "You can't fight the darkness," he said, reaching out towards me. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet. I fell to the floor, my back against the wall. "Stay away from me," I pleaded, my voice barely a whisper. He crouched down, his face inches from mine. "I am the silence," he said softly. "I am the darkness." With a swift movement, he grabbed my arm, pulling me to my feet. His grip was like ice, sending waves of pain through my body. I struggled, but it was no use. He was too strong. He dragged me to the window, forcing me to look outside. The night was still and quiet, the world oblivious to my terror. "This is where you belong," he whispered. "In the dark, in the silence." I felt a cold sensation creeping up my spine, my vision blurring. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The darkness closed in around me, suffocating, consuming. When I woke up, it was morning. Sunlight streamed through the window, the warmth a stark contrast to the cold that had gripped me the night before. I was lying on the floor, my body aching. I looked around, the memory of the night flooding back. The door was broken, the dresser still pushed aside. My phone lay shattered on the floor, a testament to the horror I had endured. But the man was gone, leaving no trace of his presence. I stumbled downstairs, my mind reeling. The back door was closed, locked as if nothing had happened. I checked every room, but the house was empty, silent. I called the police, my hands still shaking. They arrived quickly, but there was little they could do. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of the intruder. They took my statement, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. "You probably had a nightmare," one of the officers said gently. "It can feel very real." But I knew it wasn't a nightmare. The pain in my arm, the broken door, the shattered phone, these were real. The man was real. My parents returned later that day, their concern evident. I tried to explain what had happened, but they were skeptical. "You were alone, and you got scared," my father said. "It's understandable." But it wasn't just fear, it was something more, something darker. The man's words echoed in my mind, his promise that I couldn't hide from the darkness. Days turned into weeks, but the fear never left me. Every night I locked the doors, checked the windows, and kept a bat by my bed. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, watching, waiting. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I would wake up to the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the house. I would lie there, paralyzed with fear, listening to the silence, knowing that the darkness was always just a breath away.